Next up, let's add damage to the enemies and the player. Now, both the player and the enemies will need to receive damage. So that's something that I can add in our BP base character because both the enemy character and the player character are inheriting from our base character. So I can have a base implementation in there and then make adjustments where needed in both of them. So let's open up our BP base character. And again, notice how we don't have any logic in here. So it's going to show us the compact data only blueprint. I'm going to click on this to open the full blueprint editor like so. And I'm going to add a BPC health component. Now, this should already do something out of the box, but let's give it a go. There's going to be a little caveat. So out of the box, my projectile should detect if we hit a health component, and if so, stop the bullet and destroy the bullet, right? But it's not doing it. We're actually shooting through everything and nothing's really happening. So why is that? Well, if you remember correctly, let me open up my BP base projectile. My projectile, if I select the collision, it's actually set up so under collision to overlap only pawn. So this whole thing is doing on component hit collision, but we're not doing collision with the pawns, we're doing overlaps with pawns. So that's not ideal, right? So what I can then do is I can go to my collision and scroll all the way down, and I can add a on component begin overlap. So let's click on the plus. And so when this is happening, then I also want all of this stuff to happen, right? All of this code to be executed. Now, unfortunately for us, I could, link this to my execution, but I am going to need my other actor, right? So I can't also connect this, right? I can only have one reference at any given time. So if I connect it to this one, to this node, do it like that. 1 second, like so. Right? This is not going to work. So that's a problem. However, luckily, we can kind of work around that. So what I can do now is I'm actually going to take all of this logic that's behind here. So I'm going to select this whole branch here, like so. So notice that everything is correctly selected. And I'm actually going to convert this. So I'm going to collapse this to a function. And that way I can just call the function and have my inputs like I have right here. So let's do that. So notice my inputs here. I have this reroute node selected. So I'm going to right click and collapse to function. And notice that a new function is created, and I'm going to give this the name process collision. Let's move it like so. And there we go. Let's open this up. Let's double click on the process collision. And notice how we now have our codes, everything that we needed, all the functionality, all the setup is still in place, right? We are going to change something though. We're going to disconnect this thing, the for each loop. I don't want this to be executed. Remember, this is just here as a reference on how to do that, but we're not going to use it. So I just want to have a process collision, and then that's going to execute and do all of the stuff that we had before. All right, good. Now let's also select the function. And let's actually also set it up so my access specifier is set to protected. So my inherited, should I make another projectile, then I can inherit this processing and override it, or do whatever I want with it. And let's also change the input name to the other actor. There we go. Let's hit compile. All right. So if I now go back to my event graph, I can actually just process collision, target this myself, do the other actor, and then copy paste this to my overlap and also process collision and also take the other actor, right? So now I will have this functionality without having to copy everything and be able to have multiple actors. And that's something that you will find often, that once you start noticing that this is getting really cluttered, my event graph, well, you can select them all, collapse them to a function, and then have a clean main graph. Right? Now, I'm using the on component begin overlap. I could actually also use the event actor begin overlap. So that's the one that is placed here by default. This one will also be called at the same time, right? So actually, I'm going to use that one instead. So I'm going to link that one, like so, other actor, and disconnect this one. Alrighty. And because of this, let's also get rid of it completely. And that should have the same result. Alright, cool. So that takes care of the overlap stuff. So let's give it a go. We might have some errors, but that's fine. I just want to test it. See, it stops firing if we hit the enemy. The projectile is destroyed. So that's working as intended, how we wanted. Now, we still need to handle the health, of course. So let's go back to our BP base character. And let's select our health component and add an on-dead event. So click on the plus icon again. And just as we did before, let's drag from here and do we destroy actor. Alrighty, so let's hit compile, let's hit save, let's hit play. So I can shoot these things, I can shoot the enemy, excellent. Now, there is something that can also happen, because if I now stand in front of a wall and hit myself, bam, I died. So the player character died and my camera, I depossessed the pawn and my camera got moved back to the player controller location, which was the camera location with like the orientation of my pawn, right? So I'm now in the middle of nowhere. Stuff isn't really working anymore, right? So this is a problem. And of course, look at that, a whole bunch of errors because we are trying to access a pawn. In the AI node, we are trying to access a pawn that doesn't exist anymore because we didn't add a safety, right? We didn't do a null check or anything like that. So there's a bunch of things that we need to take care of. So, but the important thing to take away here is that we can now damage the enemies, and the other stuff we can take care of in a second. So let's try and fix it. And the way we can do this is by adding a tag system. So we don't want the projectiles to deal damage to the player itself. We only want them to deal damage to enemies. So to kind of work around that, I will open up the player character. And let's select the class defaults over here. And let's move all the way down to the actor category. So let's go over here and let's open this up. And notice that you have this thing called tags. Let's add a tag. Let's open it up. And let's add a tag friendly. Like that. So now the player character will have a friendly tag. Let's hit compile and save. And let's go back to our base projectile. Let's open up our process collision function. Right? So basically, if our other actor has a a friendly tag, then we don't want to do anything, right? We kind of want to ignore it. So let's take care of that. Let's set it up so that if we hit an actor, we're first going to do a tag check. So let's select this, move it to the side somewhat, like so. And actually also, while we are here, let's clean this up a little bit. Because all the lines, all the spaghetti, I don't like it. So let's do that. Like so. Just so it's, out of the way. Good. So let's get our actor. And let's do has tag. Actor has tag. And we're going to check friendly, right? So does it have the friendly tag? And we're going to invert the result, so not. Like so. And after R is valid, we're going to do a branch. Like so. So if it doesn't have the tag, then continue. Let's move this over here, nice and clean. Add a comment. Check if our target doesn't have a matching ignore tag. And what you could also do, you could also have, a list, or an array of tags that you can loop over and check all of them, right? But in our case, we're just going to have one for now. All right. So let's try it. Let's see if we can kill ourselves. So let's hit play again. Like this, like that. And then it's no longer destroying. If we hit ourselves, it's just going through us, just as we wanted. Excellent. I want to make a final change though, so I go back to my projectile. And I want to make this into a variable, so I'm going to right click, promote to variable, and give it a name ignore tag. Let's make it public, and let's put it under the projectile category. Right. Again, we want this to be configurable, so if we were to have enemy projectiles, then we can just set up the enemy projectile to have a different ignore tag. Again, avoid hard coding stuff as much as possible, especially for stuff like that. Good. So now we can damage the enemies, but we still want the enemies to damage the player, right? But we'll do that in a next video.